What is up, guys? It's your boy Rick Kakis, and today we are going to be discussing the absolutely massive scandal going on within Destiny 2 right now that is causing so much drama within the community. Now, this, of course, is the Perk Weighting Conspiracy. I talked a bit about this in my Thursday news video, but since that point, there's been some massive developments coming straight from Bungie, and most importantly, you can't call this a conspiracy anymore. And so, let's get started. Now, to understand why this became such a big issue within the community and why it caused so much drama, we need to go over everything that happened chronologically. What the heck the Perk Weighting Conspiracy actually is, Bungie's initial responses, and then their new responses. So, this all started with the release of the Vesper's Host dungeon. In that dungeon, obviously there was new dungeon weapons, and one of those weapons was the Chill Inhibitor Heavy Grenade Launcher. Now, this is a great weapon. It has some incredible god rolls, and people were obviously grinding the dungeon to try to get this weapon. Specifically, people were trying to get the roll of Envious Arsenal, where damaging an enemy with your different weapons would reload this weapon, plus Bait and Switch, where damaging an enemy with your different weapons would give this weapon a big damage boost. Obviously, quite the wombo combo and an extremely powerful heavy grenade launcher. Now, really importantly to this story, the first encounter of the dungeon was cheesable. You could dupe nuclear cores to get the first encounter done extremely fast, and this heavy grenade launcher did drop from the first encounter. Now, why is this important? Well, it means that people were actually able to farm this weapon really efficiently, like get roll after roll after roll after roll. Like, people were getting dozens of drops of this weapon in a certain session of farming the first encounter. And this is where things went awry, because people are getting so many drops of this weapon, they're noticing they just can't get this roll. Like, it is almost unheard of that people actually got the Envious Arsenal plus Bait and Switch roll, and the people who did are few and far between. So people started to take to social media and talk about perk weighting. Perk weighting, of course, is the concept that certain perks have a higher or lower chance to spawn, that it's not pure RNG, it's not pure randomness. There's a unseen force acting upon this randomness to actually give you a better chance or a worse chance to get certain rolls. Now, why would Bungie do this? Playtime, right? This is something behind a lot of games out there that, hey, you don't want people to get the best possible roll right off the bat because they're going to stop playing. At least that is how the theory started. Now, importantly, it didn't just start with random social media callouts. As you can see here, people started to compile data. People started to look at what rolls people were getting with the Chill Inhibitor and tracking them to determine just how unlikely it was to get this mythical god roll. Now, Bungie actually officially responded to one of these posts, as you can see, denying the existence of perk weighting, saying they talked with the Sandbox team and there's simply no perk weighting on legendary weapons. Community manager DMG echoed and in fact doubled down on these statements, saying that his favorite comment was, "It's true when I don't get the roll I want, but it's false when I do get the roll I want," and responded in kind on Reddit as well. Now, at the time, I'm sure Bungie thought they were doing the right things, but this fueled a ton of the drama within the community because these statements from Bungie turned out to be functionally false, right? Like, Bungie was incredibly dismissive of the Destiny 2 community right here, saying that everyone's experience in-game is simply wrong. They don't know how RNG works, despite many of us, including myself, having played Destiny for years and years. We know how RNG works, Bungie. This felt different. And again, the fact that Bungie so quickly brushed this whole issue off was a huge mistake in hindsight. However, I will say, again, hindsight is 2020, and at the time, Bungie was technically not lying. Technically being the key word here. We'll get into that. Well, again, because of this dismissive response and it kind of ignoring players' actual experiences, players simply didn't take this response on face value. They dived even deeper into the issue because, again, people just could not get these particular rolls on this particular weapon. So, at this point, a bunch of players came together to record their rolls to compile even more data, and it eventually led to this Twitter post that absolutely blew everything out of the water. Because in this post was this now infamous image. It's a chart of over 452 crowdsourced drops of the chill inhibitor, and it's looking at all of the different perk combinations and how many people got these combinations. You can clearly see there's a pattern going on here. Because, I mean, in the top row, looking at Cascade Point, 25 people got a Cascade plus Chill Clip roll, but 1 person got Cascade Point plus Chain Reaction. And if we look at Envious Arsenal plus Bait and Switch, 1 person out of 452 drops got the Envious plus Bait roll, but 21 people got Envious plus Explosive Light. And this pattern was much more representative of what players were actually experiencing in-game. I mean, you can see here, I tweeted out that in 1 dungeon run, I got 3 chill inhibitors, all with Envious plus Explosive Light. There's clearly a pattern here. And speaking of patterns, this particular image, this pattern of a strip of white, like high drop chances through the middle, and then those lines of black on either side, this is actually echoed in weapon after weapon after weapon. You can see people, as they kept compiling data, as they kept recording drops, you would see the same pattern emerge every time, where certain combos of perks were dropping way higher than other combos of perks. Now, what the heck is going on here? Because we seem to have a massive, indisputable amount of evidence that people are simply not getting certain perk combinations, but Bungie came out and unequivocally said there's no perk weighting. Well, it turns out it's not the perks that are weighted, it's the perk combos. And Vendetta here was the one who kind of really brought the theory of perk combo weighting to the forefront, saying that the position of perks in the API seemed to determine their chances of dropping. Now, what the heck does that really mean? Well, let's take a look at the chill inhibitor perks in the API in the database on light.gg. So it turns out that if perks are directly across from each other, they have a higher chance of dropping. So you can see Envious is directly across from Explosive Light, and a lot of people are getting that roll. And then diagonally, you have Envious plus One for All. You can see, okay, a bit less people are getting One for All. And then even further away, you have Envious plus Surrounded. So you can see, oh, wait a minute, less people are getting Envious plus Surrounded. And then the furthest possible ways away, because again, you can go up and down in both directions, is going to be Bait and Switch. So that is the roll that no one can get, and it works every other way. Look at, one of the rolls that no one got, Danger Close plus Explosive. Well, where's Danger Close and where's Explosive? Look, they're as far apart as they can possibly be. And the other roll that no one got, Attrition Orbs plus Chill Clip. Okay, again, they're as far away as they can possibly be. So this pattern comes up every single time through many, many different weapons. And actually, this pattern is all but confirmed to be true at this point. It can both hurt you in terms of getting the roll you want, but also help you. Right now in game, guys, what people are doing is they're going and looking at all these different, somewhat recent weapons, because we don't know how long this has been in the game, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But you can actually see, wait a minute, if I'm farming this particular weapon, if it has perks right across from each other, you actually have a very high chance to get it. So, for example, with the reprised Sojourner's Tale added this season, it's a pinpoint slug frame shotgun. If you want the roll of Quick Draw plus Opening Shot, a pretty decent PvP roll, well, they're right next to each other, so you actually have a higher than normal chance to get that god roll. So again, it's worth going on light.gg and looking at the placement of perks of weapons you're trying to go after to determine if it's worth farming or not. If they're far apart, don't bother. If they're close together, you have a really good chance of actually getting them. So, in any event, at this point, people just kept compiling data and the same pattern kept showing up. The evidence became undeniable. So, Bungie was forced to issue another statement saying that they are investigating this issue once again, and then after that, the latest development is that, as you can see right here, after an investigation, Bungie 100% confirmed there is an issue with the code that is causing certain perk combos to be much less likely to be acquired. So there you go. We went from a complete player-derived conspiracy to Bungie denying its existence to Bungie confirming there is absolutely something going on after overwhelming evidence. And again, this sequence of events really didn't help things. If Bungie had spent more time investigating rather than just only looking at the individual perk weights, they might have come out and identified this issue a lot sooner. On top of that, guys, there really is the issue of how long has this been in the game for? It could have been affecting roles for years, right? Like, think about trying to get that role from, many expansions ago. Certain people are like, wait a minute, yeah, it took me multiple seasons to get a certain world drop god roll, for example. Could I have just been getting screwed by this weird glitch in the code? And funny enough, it could have actually been craftable weapons that disguised this problem for so long, because people didn't care about the god rolls for craftable weapons because they were just looking at red borders and then they could craft the god roll themselves. Again, like, people might have overlooked the horrendous RNG we were actually getting. Now, of course, this has re-sparked a debate of crafted weapons versus non-craftable weapons. Certainly, I don't think it's a fair comparison or debate right now, because this isn't RNG. This is something else. This is like a whole new system where you have a much lower chance. Like, people, when they're talking about wanting to just farm god rolls normally and not have that experience tainted by craftable weapons, they're talking about an environment with just normal RNG. So again, I don't think it's a fair argument to have right now with this skewed system, right? But again, that is an argument to come up another time. Now again, of course, there's the argument of, did Bungie do this on purpose to get people to farm longer? It's certainly a possibility. In my opinion, I don't think so, right? Like, I really think the timeline I explained just happened naturally. Bungie came out, they literally just did a low-effort investigation looking at only individual perk weighting. They didn't have any, so they dismissed the whole thing. And then once players eventually compiled all this data, then they were forced to look deeper. The problem is, like, again, how long has this been going on, and how could Bungie not notice this? Like, I think it's almost worse that they didn't do this intentionally. They just have aspects of their codes in such a key part of the game. Like, the entire game is loot-based. The entire point of playing Destiny 2 is to get good loot. You're telling me that my experience in getting that loot may have been tainted for months, if not years at this point, from this faulty code? Like, what the heck is that? And is this the tip of the iceberg? What about waiting on armor stats? Like, could certain spikes have a much less chance of dropping? What about waiting for exotic class items? I mean, now you can attune them, which is great, but before, was there certain perk combos that were impossible to get because of the API? And same thing goes for the Ergo Sum. Like, you have all of these different random drops that you now have to question. Like, how authentic was the RNG? Or were you just actually screwed for, again, an undetermined amount of time? So, this is very bad. And again, this is absolutely impacting player experience and just killing people's desire to play at this point. Because now, if you go in the API and you look at a god roll you might want to get, let's say you're trying to get a new Trials of Osiris weapon and the roll you want is far apart in the API, I mean, again, you just don't even want to play. You're like, I'm not going to bother. It's a 1 in 450 chance to actually get this stupid thing. Why am I even going to bother? And again, that's a huge problem, and hopefully Bungie can get this fixed out as quickly as possible, because it's just tainting the entire gameplay loop of a looter shooter. You have to have actual fair RNG, or else what is the point? Or you have to be, extremely fair and let your players know what that RNG actually is. Like if you're playing a gacha game and you're opening boxes or whatever, right? You're doing wishes in Genshin Impact. It tells you you have a this % chance to get this super rare character, right? To actually get this. But you know, in Destiny, we've been pretending that you have the exact same chance to get every roll for the longest time. But players deserve to know what the heck is actually going on behind the scenes with their experiences. Guys, that is it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed and found this informative. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That is linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.